Yeah.
I was curious, so I looked it up. In Hot Fuzz, it's not a goose. Swans.
Swan. Okay,
Swan.
but it's close enough. Like it's
Similar.
just a
Similar.
bird that's causing
Hold
some
on.
kind of
Is a
mischief.
swan obnoxious? I don't know about that.
This one was. It got in the middle of a gunfight.
Well, okay.
I don't know. From what I understand, swans can be pretty mean-spirited as well.
They
So
can indeed.
So all fowl really are just like, anyway.
There was a crane.
Except ducks. Ducks are wholesome.
Are they? They land
No.
in my backyard too and go crap in my pool. So no.
This is true. This is true.
The best
I-
part about that is they can't even drink the water. They're landing just to crap there. Like,
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's fair.
Hi, I'm John, and I'm a gamer.
Hi, John.
Gaming has come a long way over the last several decades. The debate on whether the medium is art has largely ended with a very conclusive yes, and around the world we're finally seeing people treat it with more of the respect that it deserves. With that in mind, and because I'm just as much of a game talker as I am a game player, I went around to all my gamer buddies to enlist their help in discussing games as art. So, if you love gaming as much as I do, then join us. Trust me, you're among friends. Listen in as we discuss the themes, gameplay, and whatever else comes to mind. It's like a book club, but gaming. Today's topic?
Untitled Goose Game. Hello and welcome to episode 10 of Book Club Gaming. I'm John, your host, and with me today are Mike.
What's up?
Adrien.
Hello.
And BC.
Hello.
And today is episode 10. We're finally into the double digits. I kind of starting to feel like it's very real to me now. And there is no more real game, I think, that we could talk about than Untitled Goose Game. I think that we're about to get into the heavy shit. I think that we're ready. So how you guys all feeling? We just listened to the theme music. What did that bring about in your heads?
It's awful. It's horrifying. It is the most amazing thing that I have seen in quite a while.
How so?
I am just remembering what it was like playing, because for a little bit of context, because I actually played it for the first time just around Thanksgiving. I was coming back from my uncle's place for Thanksgiving, and I was feeling like, you know, it's that whole post-holiday slump and all that, and I was seriously feeling it, and I was really, really not feeling great on my drive home. So I hit up a friend of mine, or I was just like sending messages randomly to people on my Discord friends list, and hit up one friend. They could come over. So they came over and brought the game with me, and it cheered me up almost immediately. It was excellent.
Nice. How about you, Adrien?
Oh, man. Just thinking back to, to the theme music and everything, I really do think about, that time in my life, all of my friends in the game industry were talking about it. I did have to go back and check the timeline, though, since I think I played this game just before the pandemic started, right around when time stopped having any meaning. So I legitimately couldn't tell you if it was like right before or right after, but it was somewhere in there. It really was like everybody kind of in the game industry community here was sort of talking about the game and hyping it up. Everybody felt that it was a really fresh take on on the stealth genre, on, what you could do with an indie game. And obviously it also became very, very popular online. So it really kind of brings me back to that little kind of interesting buzz that happens whenever somebody does something really new with a game.
Definitely. How about you, Mike?
For me, it just brings back all the memories of playing the game. This is something we did during COVID, and it was just a really neat thing to do. I had no idea what to expect out of this one. I mean, the name started Untitled Goose. I'm like, really? You guys didn't try? And then you get started like, oh, this is pretty pretty fun. I mean, I think when I hear the jingle, the thing I always think about is that boy on High Street that we honk and he falls down and we steal his glasses. I'm like, yeah, that was. It's like all that mischief that you can do, but probably not in real life. But in the game, yeah, you can. And it just was really uplifting. It's like, yeah, that was a good time.
Make him wear the wrong glasses.
Yeah.
Put his glasses back on the. Oh man, I think that to me there is just like this very slight small town charm to the way the game opens up with that theme. Mm-hmm. It's very like playful piano, not really accompanied by anything. Every once in a while it dies down, and every once in a while it picks back up, and just seeing like feeling that it just gives you in that very whimsical mood. Like you're in you have the attention span and it gives you sort of like the attention span, and then that leading into the morality of just being a goose who doesn't really care about what it's doing other than what it can get out of it. Like doesn't really understand. Like we understand as the people controlling the goose, yes, but like the goose has the attention span of the music that's playing. And I think that I could appreciate that. When you guys played the game, how did you guys play it? Did you have people spectating? I know BC, you said that you were playing it with your friend, and then did you guys at any point have anybody who was watching it?
No. We didn't really have anyone who was watching. I don't know if anyone else has played it two-person. As far as I understand, there may be a slight mechanical difference between playing single player versus two player, as far as, whether it's slightly more difficult to get stuff done. But playing it two player is a very different experience, and it does feel like something that can only be done with two players in two-player mode. Because like give you an example. In the garden section, or not the garden section, the backyard section where you've got the one person over here and one person over there, and you're trying to do this, that, or the other thing. It felt necessary to have one person distract the human so that the other person can go nab the thing that they need to nab and then squirrel it away, that the human doesn't see it and that the mission gets accomplished.
I think I get what you mean. Like, I don't feel like I would have been able to do any of that all on my own, given how attentive the humans were whenever you would take anything.
Exactly. And I have not played it, sadly, single player, so I don't know if that is true between multiplayer and single player.
Yeah, I don't know either. I feel like if there might be like more clever things you would have to do, like get high up on the priority list of the humans, like make sure that the water's going for the farmer so that they have to go do that first, or lock the farmer out even.
Mm-hmm. And what it might end up being is that there's just different missions overall, and they might just have different missions that you need to accomplish between the two. For example, there's a section in the restaurant area where one person needs to have a thing and like mess with it in this area so that a human will come by and try to pick something up. Also, the other person can come and knock a bucket on their head.
Yeah. I mean, I could see how it's possible to do that with one person. There's just like a lot more setup. And I think that's what it would be, is the game would require you to think it out a lot more, as opposed to when we did it, we just kind of brute forced it. Like, hey, go honk at him. Okay, I'll go honk at him. Yeah, sure. Mm-hmm. Look, grab his laces. Yeah, get him. And I think that the experience would be wholly different, because we're double teaming them versus being like more stealth and sly like that.
I do think it is a game that's kind of built, and tell me if you guys agree, kind of like, even difficulty aside, built to be played with others or enjoyed by some sort of a community, whether you're a streamer playing on your own but being watched by other people, or even if you just have somebody in the room to laugh at what's going on with.
Yeah, definitely. So like I played the game single player, but with my partner there in the room with me. And Laughing with her really made the game a lot better. I think if it was just me not having that kind of social energy and enjoying just all the antics that are going on, I think I would have not enjoyed it as much. As it was, though, basically everything that happened in the game, even if it was like something that was negative, like if you mess something up, it was still hilarious because it's a goose doing it to a small English town, and you basically can't go wrong with that formula.
Also, the worst that happens when you do mess up is you just end up having to wait a second while the humans reset whatever items and try it again.
Yeah, as Hot Fuzz proved, very funny stuff happens in a small English town.
Wasn't there some sort of a swan or something in that movie too?
You're right. Yeah, there was something like a swan or a duck or something.
And it was important. Like they were trying to save or find this goose that constantly gets out and probably terrorizes the town.
Yeah, something like that.
Do you think that this game is pretty well reflective of your own experiences with geese?
Yeah, geese are assholes.
I will confess that I do not remember the last time I have encountered a goose.
Really?
No, I don't. But from what I understand about geese and knowing what I know about goose biology, nature has prepared them to be asshole birds.
How so?
Anyone who knows better, correct me if I'm wrong here. Geese, not only... yeah, this is going to mess you up. Geese have teeth, not just as part of their bill. They have basically like frilled, or no, not frilled. I'm sorry, that's the wrong word. They have protrusions on their bill, on the inside of their bill, and they have teeth on their tongues.
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
That's horrifying.
Yes, it is terrifying.
Like barbs or like actual calcium deposited teeth things?
I'm putting a photo link in the chat right now because we're doing this on Zoom. Just take a look at that horrifyingness right there.
Do you guys feel like the game missed an opportunity by not letting you actually bite people or nip at them?
I mean, not really. I mean, there's so much stuff that I can do at the same time, especially playing it 2-player. There's so much that can be done to mess with a person this way or that way. And it's interesting to just see what the human prioritizes when that's the case. Like in the garden section towards the beginning, oh, I'm going to start messing with this thing, but they'll mess with that thing. And it's interesting to see which one the human goes toward first, whether it's the thing that's closest to them or the first thing or some level of hierarchy of importance that the game prioritizes.
And you think that it being able to interact with the humans on a more violent level would have detracted from that? I think I could see that.
Yeah, I think if you were able to bite them, that's all people would want to do is let's go terrorize everybody just by biting them. We'd lose the whole point of the stealthness of the missions and that the finesse that's involved with some of those things. It would just be absolute bullies at that point.
Yeah, I think it would lose a lot of the lighthearted nature of it because at the end of the day, the whole point is to just, be a goose and be annoying. The point of it is not to be a goose and also be a complete monster. And if you had the ability to bite people and terrorize people, at that point, I don't feel like I'm playing as, just a quirky bird. I feel like I'm playing as actually mean-spirited.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I think the goose is definitely mean-spirited. The goose is definitely here as a force of chaos and destruction. However, I also agree that I don't think biting people would really add anything to the game. You can already honk at them to get their attention. You can already take stuff out of their hands. You can pull stuff up. I think anything that you could do by biting them is kind of better done by something that's already in the repertoire of actions that the game gives you. And I think that making it more contextual is better, because I think, like you said, BC, a lot of people would just go around biting everybody. And I think that's kind of what people would try first. It's like, well, how do I solve this puzzle? Oh, I'll just bite the human. Let's see if that does it. While with the more constrained set of actions, you have to think about it more. Some people will run away from a goose if it starts honking at them. Other people will notice it and try to shoo you away. I like that it kind of depends, which gives you it forces the player to think more, and forces them to approach things in the way that I think the developers wanted, which is sort of in this kind of quasi-stealth system.
I think it is important to note, too, that not every interaction that you have with humans is designed to be negative. In fact, there are a few interactions that you can have with the humans that are positive. My favorite, or one of the favorites anyway, would be when you are performing for the two ladies who are having lunch at the restaurant and they give you the flower in return.
Mm-hmm.
I really like they demonstrate what it is that they want, and then you have the ability to do all those things. And
yeah, that specific part was really refreshing because of that. The humans liked you at that point.
Yeah. And at the same time, I do agree with what you said about being just an agent of chaos and all of that. But I feel like if you were able to bite people, at that point you diverge from just being an agent of chaos. And I think one of the things I like about the game is that it's playful, it's maybe mean-spirited, but it's not cruel at any point.
Mm-hmm.
The whole point of it is, this is all, oh yeah, that's totally something I could see a goose doing. Oh my God, geese. But as soon as they start biting people, that's where it snaps out of the playful, lighthearted, oh, this is just a game, playing as a goose.
Mm-hmm.
Now, okay, this is reality. This is what geese are actually like.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think it would detract from the lighthearted nature or the lighthearted tone of the game if you were able to bite people and actually injure them. As is, I think, what's the worst thing that happens to a person in Untitled Goose Game? I think somebody hits their finger with a hammer at one point. I think that's the sort of the most injury that is inflicted upon somebody.
There's also the financial ruin of making a farmer buy his radio back again and again and again and again. Or not radio, the trowel. We did the trowel, yeah.
Uh-huh.
yeah. There's that. There's some old person at the restaurant who you make fall on his ass multiple times if you want to.
The boy, he just falls out all the time.
Oh yeah, traumatizing a child. That's probably a good one.
Priceless. Oh yes.
This would be a good lead into that question.
Quarter in the therapy jar.
Yeah. And this would be a lead into that question that you had suggested there, BC.
Yeah. Through the whole thing, in each different section, it's not you just go straight through the game. I mean, you could if you wanted to. They could have developed it that way, where you can just go straight through the game and not have any opportunity to explore. But the game actually makes you explore, and it makes you accomplish all these little side missions in each area before you can go on. So my question is there a favorite task or sub-mission or side quest, I guess you could call it, that you had to do?
You want to start, Adrien?
I kind of have to think about that for a second. Let's see.
We can come back to you.
Yeah, I can jump right in there.
Go for it.
Absolute favorite one is the one where you make people buy their own shit back. That's like, I was laughing so hard when I was like, and that's a thing? Oh yeah, that's a thing. And then we make the boy go buy his plane again, and we made the farmer go buy his trowel, and I'm sure we did other things like that. That was just really satisfying. Yeah, we definitely are agents of chaos at this point.
My favorite thing about that is there's no way that lady doesn't know what's going on. Opportunistic.
Oh man, yeah. I think the best mission for me, at least, is getting the guy to cut his own rose.
That's a good one.
Right. That's right.
This really posh guy who's like sitting in his backyard drinking tea. He's just got like this one prize rose that just make him cut it. It's like, how the mighty have fallen.
I really like stealthing around that guy too.
Mhm.
You'd like put down his newspaper every once in a while. Like,
Yeah. Also getting the bow was really fun.
Oh, from the lady when you stand.
Yes.
You stand.
That was actually going to be my favorite.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
Both like it.
We can both like it.
Okay.
In fact, there's 2 bows, but only one of them gives you the checklist. But you have to do the red one for some reason. But my favorite part about that is like having her tie the bow on you, and then as soon as you get the accomplishment, like just honk at her, freak her out.
That's good. I honestly think that my favorite overall, because when you finish the game, you can go back through any level and you can do all this other sorts of stuff. I think overall, my favorite was probably trapping the kid inside the phone booth.
Ooh. I forgot about that one. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that was my favorite. Of all the things, and the whole game, that's the only child you interact with throughout the whole thing. Everybody else you interact with is either an adult or they're elderly or whatever. That is the only child that you interact with the entire time. And I think there's a kind of cruel or there's a kind of schadenfreude in just getting this kid who's terrified now of geese stuck inside of a phone booth.
And not only that, but I feel like just everything you can see about him visually, the fact that he's playing alone, just sort of this sort of character design he has, like, to me it gives the impression that he probably doesn't have a whole lot of friends. He's thinking this like really lonely kid who like just hangs around his neighborhood with the mean old shop lady and the dad who's too busy with his television business to really pay that much attention. Like, it takes a lot of harassing this kid before the dad comes out and tries to stop you. Like,
I can totally, and I think that also helps with the immersion a little bit, imagining it to be like a really small town where there's not too many folks that live there. And this is probably like one of a handful of kids in the whole town. And, whether they lives further away from other folks, because he probably lives right near the shopping district and everything, or, he's one of the few kids, or he's just by himself and everything. And I feel like it really adds to everything where you're interacting with adults the whole time. And it adds a really interesting layer to things where everybody else you interact with, you honk at them and they're mildly surprised or maybe somewhat annoyed. But then there's this kid who just runs the other way.
And then there's no other kids to bully him, so the geese have to do it.
Oh,
wow.
I hadn't thought of it like that. Thanks for that, John.
Like I guess your point about the whole biting thing, right? So no, we don't bite them, but like that, like all the evil things you would ever want to do in the game, you can pretty do that boy, and like that's what it's like.
That's true. That's true.
So,
I guess that is way more satisfying. Just untying his shoes, chasing him until he trips and loses his glasses.
Making him change glasses. No, you lock him in a phone booth. So on top of the fear of geese, you're also giving him you're also giving him a fear of small enclosed spaces.
Claustrophobia.
Exactly. On top of the fear of geese, claustrophobia.
He has like therapy sessions the rest of his life where he just going through all of his fears, and then 30 years into it, like he finally comes to the geese and they find out that all of these fears came from these 2 geese that just terrorized his small town when he was a child.
Yeah.
Incredible.
For part of the game. I mean, shoot, we trip him into the water at some point, right? He falls in the puddle.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, among all the things that you can do, like tormenting a child and, tormenting a child, as mean as it is, locking him in a phone booth was peak for me.
What do you feel like this game had any points to prove? Like, if not about life, then just in general what it means to make a game or design a game or be called a game?
So I think I have one thought there, which is that I think this really does show that like you really can build a game from the fundamentals. Like this game is much, much more different than other games in its kind of genre. And it happened because, if you look at the statements by the game devs, they're like, well, we were inspired by Super Mario 64. It's like, huh. And they're like, well, we wanted something, to move around in a 3D environment because their previous games were 2D. And they just kept iterating and going with what was fun. And, they ended up with a goose-based stealth game with some... And because of the way that they chose to build the game, they ended up with a stealth game that plays very different from other stealth games. And I think that it shows that kind of building a game up from the fundamentals, you can end up very far from where conventional games are right now.
So much so, in fact, that I had never really thought of it as a stealth game until you mentioned it, and I was like, yeah, that's exactly what it is. Like,
Yeah, it gives a different flavor to the entire thing. And honestly, I could view this, not the entire game, but this type of experience as being something put on a whole different platform apart from console or PC or wherever. The experience it gives you almost feels like, especially with doing all the side quests and everything to move on, it almost feels in some ways like a mobile game or an iOS type thing, where I could totally see something like this happening in a game that comes out for a mobile device as well. Just being able to play around with the environment and see what happens.
Right. I mean, in that way, it's a sandbox game. I think if you had to kind of talk about what its overall genre is, it's like, well, okay, it's a 3D sandbox-based stealth game, kind of with an emphasis on like manipulating AI and the environment around you and how they react to the environment, rather than conventional stealth games, which, even if they are kind of sandboxy, tend to be a lot more focused on like sneaking by or killing, your obstacles.
It's really interesting thought that, like, at no point did I ever really think about it as a stealth game. I just, like, until you brought it up, Adrien, because seriously, for us, we were just assholes and brute force our way through the vast majority of it.
So I could think of like 3 spots where we were really stealthing. But even then, I feel like there was a lot of times where we just sort of did a mix of like brute force it and then stealth just enough to lose the human's interest. Which I gotta say, they're like, the attention span of this small town is not like
it's not
pretty disorganized, and they're pretty.
You think at some point they'd learn, hey, we should probably do something to protect this one thing that keeps getting messed up.
Well, I feel like one of the things that you do in the game is when they're protecting one resource, you just go after another one. I feel like they learn that pretty quick. And if it's not in the small town, it's in the smaller town. Like in the game, like you.
But like, I mean, I think their best thing was they put all those signs everywhere. No geese, right?
Yeah.
I do love that as like a marker for like you finished this level. Like it's like you've accomplished your task of annoying the town, as BC put, being the point of the game, so well that they've like officially taken up a policy like no geese allowed. But it's still not like they come after you with shotguns or anything like that. They're just like, so who's the sign for? Is it for the geese? Are we the geese supposed to see the sign and be like, oh, well, never mind that?
Right.
Or are they just like unifying under this symbol? Like,
I'm pretty sure it's intended to be the former, but I like the latter.
Party.
What were you saying, Adrien?
Oh, I said I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be the former, that we the player are supposed to understand that they're saying like, no geese at all. But I like your other interpretation, which is that they are forming the anti-goose league.
I just think it's interesting that they put the signs up, but they don't get any better at keeping the goose. They don't change their responses to the goose outside of just having the sign up. Which is interesting.
Yeah, one thing that I think is really funny, and we kind of touched on this, is that I really love, we were talking about, keeping the goose out. That's really the objective of most of the adults in the game, is rather than in most stealth games where if you're detected, you get attacked and killed and you generally have to restart. In an Untitled Goose game, you get shooed away from whatever you were doing and then you can just try again. And it's really refreshing from this sort of any mistake is catastrophic to, dude, you're a goose, you don't freaking care. Oftentimes if somebody snatches something away from them, I just honk at them a bunch, run around the corner and right back. And for a player like me, where I tend to get really stressed out by a lot of failure conditions, just having a game where it's there's really no failure conditions, they can undo some of the stuff that you did, but it's really not a big deal. It's really nice. It makes the game very, very enjoyable to play. There's not a lot of interruptions in gameplay, not a lot to take you out of the experience of being a primal force of chaos. And I think that, like I said before, I think that's a really nice thing that came out of this kind of new take on the game, is just we can just have a much more smooth, streamlined experience that feels natural, but is still very forgiving to making mistakes.
I agree. I think that it's interesting that they title it Untitled Goose Game. Like Mike had said earlier at the start of this, it's you really weren't trying. But in retrospect, it does feel like kind of the perfect title for the game.
Yes.
Because the goose, as much as you do have these focused goals, the goose as a character does feel kind of aimless. They feel, like you said, as a goose. They don't really give a fuck. They're just sort of fucking around because they're dicks.
But maybe that's it. They don't give a fuck, right? Therefore, that's why it's good.
It's Untitled. Yes. They're just out and about. They were at home at the start of the game, and then they decided we're gonna go into town and do some terrorizing. They don't.
Right. I like to think that the game is titled as such because it is just the platonic ideal of playing as a goose in a video game, and because of that, it requires no additional, elaboration in the title. In reality, I just looked this up. In reality, the game got nominated for some awards so early that they just had to quickly come up with something. But once they gave it that name, they really liked it and it stuck. Apparently, the only other name that they considered, and even it wasn't very serious, was some like it Honk, which is
not as good.
Quality pun. It's a quality pun, but
Honk.
It's not as good.
But now that you say that, yeah, Untitled Goose Game is probably the best title there is for this game.
Yeah.
Better than Goose Game, though?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think,
Definitely.
I think you had something you wanted to add, BC?
No, I think he got it very succinctly. It's just that, I think he got it pretty succinctly. I think Untitled Goose Game works really well as a title, and it's unique enough to the point where it just stands out from everything else. I mean, perfectly honestly, there is nothing else like it.
Yeah.
And yet, Untitled Goose Game as a title works so perfectly to make it stand out all the much more.
I do think that the title harkens back a little bit to games like Goat Simulator, which, have kind of a similar formulation. Obviously, Goat Simulator is kind of similar in that it's a game where you're playing a wacky animal in kind of a strange sandbox world. But there, the game is more about just its completely broken physics engine rather than having really more of a streamlined gameplay experience.
Would you say that this game has more of a narrative?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, totally. It's not just Goose messing around with town. It's you have a mission. And at the same time as you're on the mission, why not cause a little chaos while you're on the way?
Yeah, I think the narrative of Untitled Goose Game is very, very simple. It pretty much only makes an appearance at the beginning and the end of the game. At the very beginning of the game, it's, you are a horrible goose And at the end of the game, when you see that the goose has dropped the bell that you just stole into a pit filled with more bells, and they're, I didn't actually realize this. I didn't notice that pit until I finished the game. Apparently, you can see it at the beginning as well. So for me, it was this reveal that this entire time, this isn't just something this goose has done once. This goose has been terrorizing this town for God knows how long.
Honestly, that is exactly my experience as well. When I played it with my friend, I don't know whether it was on purpose or not, but I did not realize there was a section you could go and look at all the bells at the very beginning. Mm-hmm. It was only until the very end where I'm like in that starting area where it's like, okay, wait, the thing hasn't gone off. What am I supposed to do? Where can I go? Go around the perimeter, go around the center. I can go right here. Wait, I can drop it. Oh my God, there's multiple ones of them. And honestly, if that had been an actual game mechanic, that would have made the entire thing so much better.
Behind the bush is the new behind the waterfall.
Exactly. If that had been at the very beginning where you cannot look into that section with all the bells, and at the very end it is opened up to you, that makes the whole thing that much funnier to me.
Oh, I think for me it's like, even if you did see the bells, I'm like, so what? Okay. I mean, I really went into this game with no understanding of what it was or anything like that. Like Adrien, you were saying that everything was told in the industry that, oh yeah, this is something pretty impressive. For me, it's like, all right, let's play a game. And so if I did see the bells, I'm like, okay. It wasn't until that last scene, like, okay, I got it. And that indeed was my favorite part of the whole game. Was like, and they've been doing this for that long.
And you think, but you probably would have caught on when we stole the bell. It would have been like, rather than when you get it back.
Possibly. But like at that point when we're doing it, I was just really focused in the game. It's like, all right, bell, yeah, keep going. I do this, keep going. Yeah. And I wasn't even thinking about any of that until it all coalesced at the end, like, so good. Yes.
Yeah. And for me, it actually makes it that much better, because not knowing that this has happened so many times at the very beginning and playing through the game, getting the bell and trying to go back through every section, it makes it that much better for me. You go through it, you get to that point, and then all of a sudden you have to figure out all the reasons behind this. Like, why I took the bell, why is everybody after me now? And it's not just the folks that are actually antagonistic, it's every single person in the game now is after me.
Yeah. And that's them unifying under the symbol and chasing you out. They finally had enough.
Exactly.
The best part about it is I think that is like all of the tasks repeatable. Like you can just keep repeating that task and like adding to your pile over and over again.
Exactly.
Is that one of the time missions? The 6-minute missions?
Yeah, so there's like time trial missions.
After you beat it the first time?
You can like, it's like within 6 minutes complete all the tasks from this area and then this area. And so it's like, yeah, you can just keep repeating them over and over again and get more and more accomplishments. On that note, do you guys feel like this story of a goose could have been told in another medium effectively, or how different do you think it would have been if they'd tried?
I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, and that this type of thing would work well as a mobile game where, because it has that feel a little bit of it being idle or it being just like a really lighthearted thing. But honestly, I think it makes it that much better that the fact that you play it on console or wherever, and it gives the feel, oh, this is a serious game, but you're doing not so serious stuff, and you're there just to have a good time.
How about like outside of video gaming though? Like if they were to make like an Untitled Goose game or Untitled Goose movie or show or a children's book, comic book.
I mean,
no. Good.
I mean, I could potentially see a children's book about this, about these a-hole goose geese, and we don't like them at all. And I could definitely see something like that. That's probably as far as I can see as something successful. But please go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say something pretty similar, where the story is so simple that so much of the game is the gameplay itself, and so much of it is kind of experiencing the environment and how the people of the town interact with it. The story itself, you're right, you could condense it down into a pretty simple children's book. You could probably have every level be about 2 pages of situation, what the goose has done, situation, what the goose has done. And because of that, trying to translate this into like a movie, it wouldn't work at all. You'd have to tell a completely different story. Could you tell it as like a super over the top comic book? Maybe, not really. Could you tell it as a book, like a novel? Not at all. It's just the wrong kind of story to tell.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think that it's like there are a couple of ways that you maybe could do it differently, but it's not that you should. You probably wouldn't work very well. I think that this was a really good game to have on the podcast because it's an example of a story that really only works as a video game.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And to touch a little bit again on it being as a comic book, how would you set that up as a comic book without really giving the goose? If you're going to do that, you either have to make the goose the main character, in which case you'd probably have to give it an inner voice or a narration and talk about it, or you have to be it as the people. And it's just a comic series of everybody getting terrorized by this goose or these geese.
Yeah, that would have been my thought on how you do that. Is we take it from the point of view of the gardener, and then the sales lady, and then the boys, and then the restaurant owner is like, yeah, that's how it be. And all the tones would be very different on their inner monologues.
I could maybe see it working a little bit as like a 3-panel comic series in the funnies newspaper, between Garfield and Family Circus.
Yeah,
that's actually interesting as a 1-week thing, because I think there's like 6 different sections of the game, right? And that works perfectly because you have one section for each day, and then like so many comics, like Garfield, for example, Sunday comic is the big one. That's the one where they get the bell. There's a quick pic of everybody running through each of these levels, and at the very end, he's dropping the bell into his big pile of bells.
Yeah, I mean, I think it would even work if it's just kind of you just kind of have what's the term? Just some very, very simplistic stories where it's that typical like 3-4 panel setup where it's just like intro, mid, finish. Situation, goose arrives, things resolve, sort of gag style. That I think that could work. Would it have the same feeling? It was probably better than a lot of the other options we discussed. I think if you tried to turn this into an anime, it would probably have a very, very different tone.
I think it maybe works better as like a tie-in than it would be as like an alternative way of telling the story. It's like for people who really loved Goose Game, there's this comic strip. Maybe you could subscribe to it or something. Like maybe there's already people doing it on like Instagram or something. But I really love the idea, BC, of ending each strip with them dropping a bell into the pile. And maybe you can start with like no bells, and like the first strip issue would be the first bell, and then like every published issue after that would be all the bells.
I for that, I like at some point something else in the pile too. Like they were
occasionally
such an asshole, like the kids' glasses or some shit like that.
Eventually, we just took the glasses.
At that point, it just becomes even more of a trophy room, really.
Yes.
Is that deep? I like that interpretation of it being an actual trophy room. Like the geese aren't just that short of attention span. They know how many bells they have. They still want more.
Exactly. And and I love to imagine it as every time they go out, like this is just one time. every time you play the game, you've got this particular setup and you get the bell. But I love the idea of this is just one time they've done it, and it's only been this way this time. Like, they take a different route to get to the bell. They take this way, that way, another way. And by now, everybody in town knows that there's a goose about, but they don't know where they're going to go. They don't know how they're going to get there. And the whole fun of it is every time the geese do this, it's different.
Mhm.
And that's how they're so successful. That's how they have so many bells.
Goose heist. They're
Exactly.
like one of those like Ocean's 11, Fast and the Furious heist gangs, and they just steal bells.
Yeah.
I would love to actually, I don't know if this is possible or not, but I would love to see like a cameo type thing of this in an Animal Crossing game, where they use bells as currency.
Oh, just the Goose Mafia.
The nod,
Yes.
the homage to this. Yeah, that'd be great.
Yes, exactly. You've got somebody that comes to your island or whatever, and it's just, hey, I'm from this town and I've got a lot of money.
I was curious for like one thing I keep seeing with games or successful games is they kind of cross into different mediums. So like for example, World of Warcraft, that became a board game.
And
like
movies, if I'm not mistaken. They've had at least one movie.
right. So I was like, could Untitled Goose Game be a board game? I mean, would this be considerably fun that you could, either be the goose or you'd be one of the angry, irate townspeople, something like that, or maybe to take the monetary route and be a collectible card game.
I was going to say
really-
card game would be more, because at the very least, even if you couldn't come up with like a capable like system of play, you could at least collect the cards. Like like Pokemon, I don't think anyone ever really knew how to play.
See, I'm imagining it as a game like if you ever played Mafia as a kid,
Yeah,
where everybody's got like their eyes closed and one person is the goose and they decide who they're going to mess with. And, everybody has to decide like one at a time, what are you going to do? You're going to try to do this or you're going to try to do that or whatever.
Well, there actually is a game like
a narrator. A
That
narrator
was-
who's running the game just tells you this is what the goose does and what happens.
There's a game similar to that. It's called a Duck Duck Goose.
okay,
Okay, you could go away now. You've hit the height of your comedy. You can leave now.
That's good. Anyway,
Oh, gosh.
But I mean, it's to be a much more deep version of that.
Mm.
I guess, yeah, geese have been that big of assholes for that long that even when we were kids, we had a whole game about being a goose and chasing somebody around a circle.
I mean,
I honestly hadn't thought of it until you brought it up. But yeah, it's got to be some reason. Why duck, duck, goose? Why not dog, dog, cat or something?
I have a story for you guys. When I was a little kid, my dad took me and the family to the park, and there were these geese there. And I think at the time they were taller than me still, and they knew it. And they were picking on me, and they were like chasing me around, and I was terrified of them. And I think my family was just pointing and laughing at me.
You were the boy in the game.
Oh no!
I was the boy in the game. I was the boy in
Oh
the game.
no!
oh,
You were the kid in the game, scared of the
Those-
geese.
And I remember thinking at the time, like, I wish I was the goose in this situation. So to have that kind of wish fulfillment, like this later on in my life, has
Oh
been
god,
nice.
that must have been cathartic for you, playing through that section and screwing around with the kid.
Yeah, definitely.
Childhood trauma gone.
Just like get in the head of my enemy. Just be like, you know what? You're all right, goose. I get you now. You didn't mean it. You're just a goose.
Yeah.
I mean,
10 out of 10. 10 out of 10 would play again.
like for me, it hits a little closer to home because was it in the summer or like towards the fall, the ducks and the geese begin to migrate. Like there's this giant pond at the community center where I'm at, and they start to get up and go away. But what they had to do is they stopped by my place and landed in my pool and shit in my pool. So I'm still one of those, like one of the townspeople, you asshole geese. And like, really bothers me. So still traumatized to this day.
Yeah, I work at a pool on most summers, and yeah, that is definitely a thing where you get there first thing in the morning. You have to do, even before you start setting up the area, get rid of the ducks. Or get rid of the geese, get rid of the birds and everything.
Mm-hmm. You found some geese in your neighborhood this week, right, Mike?
Oh, that's right.
You were out on a walk, and you sent us all a picture of the two geese, and they were looking pretty shady. They were looking like they were either just up to some shit or they were waiting for you to look away.
Yeah, there's like a perfect segue into this cast. I'm like, I'm seeing this is like brings me right back into there. So yeah, they really need someone, I guess, probably likes geese and set that up in their yard, some bronze statues, whatever. That was really fun.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how would you guys rate the overall presentation of the game? Graphics, music, the way the controls feel?
I don't know, scale of 1 to 10, I'll say an 8. The graphics are not specifically high fidelity, and that's okay. I definitely enjoyed the is it actually 3D, or do you call it 2.5, or however you want to call it?
No, it's 3D.
It's
3D.
Okay, so, all right.
It's just got kind of that pastel.
Sure. I'm not familiar with the actual terming, but that was nice and fun and easy. I tend to be very Butterfingers when it comes to video games, so the fact that I was able to get through most of this stuff, it was pretty easy for me. I definitely enjoyed that. I wasn't messing up because I pressed the wrong button. I was messing up because I was watching the other goose go around, and so that was that was okay. No, it was, again, the lightheartedness of it, and just you come to understand what it is in the sandbox presentation. I liked it. I liked it a whole lot. I guess the only things that were hard for me were, I guess I get a little motion sickness with the 3D-dimensional part. So sometimes when you're turning the corner and moving the camera with you, it was still nice and smooth. I'm like, oh, okay, hold on here. And that'd been the only thing for me. But I'm extra sensitive, so I wouldn't really hold that against him too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think overall I'd probably give the game like a 9 out of 10 for overall presentation. I really enjoy the kind of impressionistic style of the graphics. I think as we approach the point where you can pretty much make graphics as good as you can invest in people to make them, I think for indie studios, it really makes sense to start looking into these less than realistic styles, looking into things like impressionistic or retro, as we've seen in many games. And I think this is a great example of a indie game that is 3D that has used some kind of stylistic decision to greatly limit the fidelity of their graphics while still having a very good visual presentation overall. I think the sound design is fantastic. I really like the fact that human speech is completely replaced by just these musical notes. I think it does a really great job of conveying the fact that the goose doesn't understand any of this, while also making it so that the devs didn't have to do any voice acting. That also just kind of goes well into the overall soundscape. I think the controls, for the most part, are pretty good. The point that I'd take off is that sometimes it can be a little bit difficult to choose what you're picking up. Contextual actions like that can be a little bit complicated. So I do feel that in some cases, if you had a few items are nearby, you'd sometimes find yourself picking up kind of the wrong thing. Which is by no means a huge problem, but especially with kind of how forgiving the game is, but it could be frustrating at times. I think that's kind of my overall opinion about the presentation. Quite good, where the really you can see the presentation come together with the overall design, and it's like there's exactly the right amount of game in this game.
I would agree. I really liked what you were saying about the graphics as well, being simpler, being a better option. I think that the realistic looking games tend not to hold up as well as time passes on. But if you go for style more so than being realistic, like Like we saw it happen with Wind Waker, The Legend of Zelda. Where it's like a lot of people at first were just like, really, like this looks so too child friendly. But if you look back in that era of gaming, The Wind Waker is one of those games that holds up simply because it wasn't trying to be realistic and therefore couldn't be outdated. Even when they did the HD remake, I was like, it almost looks worse. I feel like it looked better in the first place.
Yeah.
My overall rating, I think I would split the difference. I'd say you said 8, you said 9. I would say 8.5. I think that the fact, like what you mentioned about picking up items being difficult, like that was a little bit frustrating, like especially when you had to really swoop in and grab keys out from under someone's before they could shoo you away. Like it would have been nice to have just a little bit more precision offered to the player. Other than that, though, I thought the gameplay was really good. I really enjoyed the slight tankiness to the geese, because it just sort of like you had to kind of charge right at somebody or like take this little bit of a loop around. And I think it did kind of level the playing field a little bit in a way. I feel like if you had too tight of a control, it would have given the geese kind of an unrealistic advantage, something that would have even broken my immersion to be able to control it even better, which feels kind of weird to say.
Yeah, it's kind of funny, and this might be a little bit of a tangent, but it tends to be that the more responsive the controls are, the less the animations tend to look kind of reasonable. Where in a lot of games that have like really tight controls, what you'll actually see is that they've got a system called like animation canceling, where if you tell if you tell your character to do something else while they're in the middle of like winding up or winding down from their current action, they'll just kind of like snap through the animation. Here, the devs chose to not allow that, and it gives, like you said, the geese a little bit of a tanky feel. It really makes them feel like big, weighty birds. And the animations really do a great job of showing that. Kind of, you've got animations for speeding up and for turning. One of the big things is that as you turn, as you kind of push to one side in order to pick something up, the bird's head moves and can see that long neck kind of crane around. And I think that really gives you this great feeling of being a goose, where if instead you had gone with the character controller that you might see in other games, it would probably feel a lot less, it would feel more snappy, and you'd probably feel a lot less like a goose.
That's a great point. I think I'm gonna actually bump, given that information, my rating up to a 9. And I'm also thinking of a very specific moment now in my head, where you're going through a house and you don't really see what's going on in the house. You just, as long as you're moving in the house, there's just a bunch of clattering and things breaking and stuff getting thrown around. You can hear, and then you just come out the other side, and then you can steal somebody's like package right off the doorstep. I guess there are a lot of little touches in there that bring that rating, the presentation rating up for me. How about you, BC?
I agree. I'd rate it. To be honest, I'm a little bit biased just because I was in a bit of an emotional slump when I played it, and it brought me right out of that. I would definitely rate it like a solid like an 8 to 9, somewhere in that range. Yeah. It ticks off all the boxes of, I'm not really playing this game to win. I'm not playing this against anybody. I'm not playing this against anything. I'm just there to have a good time. And, I had a great time. And, it checks off all the boxes for me. I love the art style, and I love that it's so simple and simplistic compared to so many other games that are being made at the same time. I love that the mechanics and the gameplay of it are so simple and refined compared to other games that involve any stealth element or involve a lot of, environment and AI manipulation. And I love that, there's something to be said for a game where, it's not quite a sandbox because you can't do anything that you want, but it does give you that feel of just, be a little chaos goblin and you're just going to have a great time with it. And I really, really appreciate it for those reasons.
So in that case, would you guys say that this game fulfills on the promise of making you feel like a goose?
Definitely.
Totally. Absolutely.
I mean, sure. Yeah. Everything I envisioned about that a-hole bird. Yeah, fulfilled. Yeah, 2 wings up.
Yeah, I think I mentioned it way earlier. At no point do I feel like, nah, this isn't something a goose would do. No, this is absolutely. If I heard about a goose doing this, I'd be like, yep, sounds like geese.
Yeah.
What did you guys think of the town within a town at the end of the game? Was the main story's ending satisfying? Like, we talked about the bell, but like, how did it feel to stumble across the actual model town at the end of the game? Like,
I thought it was a really clever ending. I will admit that I was expecting one more level, and the town level is like pretty basic. It's really just a thing there for you to steal the bell so that you can go back through the rest of the game. But overall, I really enjoyed it. I loved seeing the whole game kind of as miniature. And, I feel like that's an important thematic point in the game because it shows, I'd almost say, how the goose views itself as this monster stomping through the town. A giant lording over the town. So I think there's some subtext there that I think it fulfills quite nicely.
Yeah, at the same time, tell me if I'm wrong here, because I don't remember. Is that supposed to be a mini town of the town that you just went through?
Yeah. It's a replica of the town.
Oh, okay.
I really like that it gives you a sense of the scale of the town that you're in. Like, I think there were times when I was playing the main game and I thought, wow, this town is really big. Other times when I was thinking it's really small, but being able to like walk through it in giant size. Which, by the way, the first time that we came across it, like, I didn't realize until we were about halfway into it what exactly it was that we were looking at. Like, until I saw like I forget which landmark it was, but when I saw it, I was like, "Oh my god, this is the town."
I recall this because I think when we got to that point, I either poured myself another thing or had something fun, and so as he was running through, I'm like, dude, this is the thing. I was like, what? Like, this is the thing. This is the town we just went through. Yeah, it was a revelation for me to actually understand that. I think to Adrian's point, I kind of was expecting a level before that, or just like one thing more. And maybe that's what the DLC will be next. Is I'll put something right in the middle.
That'd be cool, or something off to the side.
Yeah.
It does kind of raise the question to me though, like. You never see the actual bell, the church bell. You hear it throughout the entire game. It'll ring once in a while, but you never see it. You only ever see the model of the bell. Do you think that like the goose has seen the giant bell, is aware of it, and like that's like the big score, the end all scores? Like, I'm gonna retire on this one, like one day. I think the goose's scope is a little bit smaller than that.
I think the way the goose sees itself is I think. I would almost go so far as to say that the goose views itself as like the lord over this town, and it's just taking what's rightfully what belongs to it.
Clever.
I'd say that probably, if we did get a DLC, I wouldn't be surprised if at some point, he stole the big bell.
Yeah. Maybe the tower itself could be like that DLC level, and then you make your way up to the tower and like detach the bell or something, and it like falls down.
It like falls down and rolls off. Yeah, I mean, especially messing with like an old like vicar or something that's just so British, it would be perfect.
Is it a British game?
Well, it takes place in England, rural England.
That makes sense. Okay.
I believe it's an Australian studio. It might be New Zealand though, but I believe it's Australian.
Okay. Down under.
Okay.
I mean, like I said, I didn't realize it was a microcosm of the town we were actually in until just now. And you guys know, as bad as my memory is, it is entirely possible that I was told that when I arrived, and I just don't remember.
I don't think the game like outright tells you.
No, the game definitely does not.
Oh, by the friend
The
that you were
person, yeah, like I said, I played it with someone else. The person I was with probably did, and I just don't remember.
I thought it was a really neat twist. It's a very interesting culture that the town has. Like it's already a really small town, and it's so small that it doesn't need all of the space that it even has, and so it dedicates like 1/5 of itself to itself. And I never went and looked for the part of the town that has the model within the model. But now I kind of want to go back and look and just see if like that is there.
I think it is.
Yeah.
It is. And the thing that makes it, doubly interesting for me, thinking about that, is that, if it's supposed to be a town within a town, you go to this section, and then there's a section where there's a town in a town. I mean, like you said, is that little castle, is the castle thing actually a part of the town? Or is this... Yeah, is the part with the bell, is that actually like part of the town, and for some reason they just have a miniature destroyed castle with a bell? Or is this a town that actually has a castle with a bell? And not only did they make a miniature version of it for the town, but they also made a miniature of there's a tiny castle within the little town you go into at the end.
Well, we do know that there is a bell somewhere in the town because we hear it ringing.
It chimes, it rings.
It rings throughout. But I'm wondering, like, tiny bell heist. Like,
what, take the bell from the smallest town?
The smallest town, yeah.
And it turns, you get to that point of the game, and it turns out that's the DLC. You do it again, except now it's even more gamified, where instead of zooming out and becoming gritty and realistic, it turns into, now you are like, I don't know, a Lego duck doing Lego duck stuff, and you can't even move your legs or anything, like you're in South Park.
I'm not sure if I'd be paying for that DLC.
Fair point, well made.
Yeah, but I mean, I see what your point is. Yeah. Anyway,
how far down can you go, dude?
Yeah, how far
does the goose go?
Yeah, there's an interesting point that at no point do you actually interact with the bell, and whether it's done intentionally or just for fun, it would have been nice to at least just you come across the building and see it and have it ring for you, because it's a mechanic of the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
would you guys want to see a sequel to Untitled Goose Game?
Definitely.
Yeah.
Titled Goose Game. Yes.
Titled Goose Game. If that's not the title, then they're messing up. Yeah. More geese. Like, could you imagine like a 4-player?
Oh man.
Like a mode that was designed for 4-player? Like,
well, I mean, would you be the goose again, or would the second one be the townspeople?
Like a tower defense against the geese?
Yeah, I would love to. I'd just like, and get that out of my thing and stuff like that.
I think the big question with a question like, or the big thing with a question like, do you want to see a sequel, is always like, do the developers really have any more ideas? Given how sandboxy the game is, I suspect they could probably come up with more content. The question really is, does the game need more content? I imagine that a sequel will sell pretty well, but can it deliver the same way that the original did is kind of up to a question. The big problem with sequels is that people expect more of the same but different. And
exactly.
It's like, can the devs iterate on the gameplay, provide more content, and still wrap things up nicely with a bow, just like the original did? I would actually say that will probably be quite challenging. I'd almost say that an approach like releasing some DLC levels would be a better way to approach it, just because of how tight the first game is. Creating another game that has that level of elegance would be very challenging.
I think we came to the same conclusion when we did the Death Road to Canada episode.
Yeah,
we talked about a potential sequel. It's just like it'd be better just to keep adding to the actual game.
Yeah. I agree, and I feel like it'd run into to talk about another really, really tight, amazing game, Portal by itself was an incredible game. Portal 2 by itself is a really good game. The problem is that Portal 2 is a sequel, and it has to be compared to the original. And comparing the two, I feel like, Portal 2, it puts more in there, but I feel like Portal, the original, is a better game overall still.
Right.
It was
It's
so
more
tight.
elegant.
It was so compact and clean and neat, and it did everything it needed to do, nothing that it didn't. And with Portal 2, a lot of it feels a little bit extra. And, it's really cool to go through similar environments to what you did before, and it's cool to do the same sort of stuff as before and add in a couple of extra new mechanics here and there. But at the same time, it also seems to start losing the magic that it had originally.
Yeah, I mean, another big thing is like when you come with a new game like this, where kind of nobody has thought of doing something like this before, the initial reaction, that initial sense of discovery of like, oh man, that's amazing. You can't replicate that. Even if you do make a sequel that is objectively a better game, you are likely not going to be able to re-invoke that magic. And just because of that, it is potentially going to be more difficult to make a, quote, better version of the initial game. But that's something that a lot of media struggles with. Books, movies, TV shows, many of these things struggle with how do we keep going after we've done something that is so concisely wrapped up and well done. And there's really no good solution to it.
Except with video games. I think video games is unique in that way because especially video games of this era, we have DLC that is an option. And so if really what people do want out of Untitled Goose Game is just more tasks to do and maybe more areas to do it in, it really is just as simple as adding to the base game rather than, having to release a sequel or a 1.5 or anything like that, or even re-release it at all. You can just patch it in.
Yeah, and I mean, that is something really nice that game devs have available to them, especially now with, games being delivered through services like Steam or the Nintendo Store, things like that. Not only it does releasing more content make existing players of the game happy, but it makes it a better value proposition for other people who are looking to buy it. And you will see a lot of these games that are in long maintenance modes or long public betas. When they do release new updates, you'll see these huge spikes in sales. These aren't the same people spending more money for the DLC. These are those people hyping up their friends who go out and buy the game. And, I think that's a very healthy way to approach these, making these very, very large games by indie studios where there's no way for them to, if you look at, say the eventual, like the end 1.0 state of like Factorio, there's no way that an indie game studio could have done that on their initial budget. They needed to release early. They needed the beta testing and the money from those initial sales in order to eventually develop the game that they did. And they're another good example of a studio that, they didn't charge people for constant DLC or anything like that. They're just like, we have a great value proposition. We're going to keep updating it. And we think that it's just going to keep growing. And, as we discussed, I hope that if there is more Untitled Goose Game, it follows that rather than trying, unless they have a really damn good idea. I think that's a better idea than trying to make a sequel.
Do you guys think that this is a game that will stand the test of time, that will be kind of remembered, talked about for a while to come? That's a tougher question to answer, I think, or a tougher goal to obtain for games nowadays than back when you really only had games coming out from a few different companies, like Mario 64. Like it was the breakout 3D platformer and it's remembered as such. But now there's indie games coming out constantly, all the time, and good ones too. Good ones are coming out left and right. So do you think that this one will be one that people talk about for a long time to come?
I get the feeling like it's a yes and no type of situation, because I played Untitled Goose Game. It was a hoot. It was a great time. Honestly, I hadn't really heard much about the game until I played it. And even after I played it, I didn't hear much about it. It was a big thing, but it's like hearing about Among Us, It didn't really turn into like a huge sensation. I mean, it was an overnight success, definitely. It didn't turn sensational over time.
I'm not sure I
Actually,
agree with that.
it did, because
Yeah, it did.
I think it came out a couple of years before the pandemic, and then
It came out in 2019.
Yeah, Okay, so a year before the pandemic, and then it was within the pandemic that it really took off. So it wasn't until maybe a year after its initial release that people really started getting into it, although circumstances might have been the part of the cause.
So I just looked it up. It was released in December of 2019, so about 3 months before the pandemic started.
Okay. Never mind. I was wrong.
Okay. So let me clarify a little. What I mean is, it took off, and it was an overnight success, especially because of the pandemic and everything. But I think it's also important to realize that with games like that, and with games like Among Us or anything, it has to be taken into context. Like, would this have been as huge of a success if people had not had all of that time to dedicate to it? Would Among Us have been such a success? Would Animal Crossing New Horizons have been such a success? Would this have been such a success?
So
and stacking it up against other games that we've mentioned and other games of its type, is it going to have the same type of longevity?
So I think to answer your question there, we need to look at some of the examples, which is games like Among Us and Animal Crossing. These are examples of two very different kinds of games. Among Us is a multiplayer, basically, versus game, and Animal Crossing is kind of this long-running town simulator sort of game. More like The Sims or something like that, or The Sims or like a farming simulator or anything like that. These are games that are intended to be played for hours and hours and hours and hours, either because of the emergent gameplay between people or because, things like Animal Crossing, which encourage you to come back every day. Untitled Goose Game is something that can be played in 1 or 2 sittings, and you kind of take it as is. It has an experience that it wants to sell you, and then it's done.
Yeah, I see it as much. And I think that it, for that reason, probably won't be talked about as much going forward. And I think that for that reason, there's going to be a dip in the number of people that end up playing it. I feel like retro games you play because you've heard about them, if you didn't play them when they were coming out. And if people stop talking about this game, and 10, 15 years from now, some kid is scrolling through an eShop and they see Untitled Goose Game, I think that there's a stronger chance that they're just going to flip right past it and not even look at it, which is a shame. But I do feel like this is a game that really strived under the notoriety that it was getting. And as that notoriety dies down, I think that it becomes, for that reason, less culturally relevant. Like, it's not a game everyone's playing anymore.
So I'm actually going to disagree with you too, on kind of what it means for it to be sort of important going forward. I do think that you're going to see the monthly average users of Untitled Goose Game go down over time. It probably has been since, its first month or two of success. However, I think it's also important that Untitled Goose Game is now basically part of the history of gaming, where not every jump forward in the game in gaming is going to be remembered by by millions of monthly downloads for the foreseeable future, but this is going to affect developers coming forward. It's going to affect all the players who played it. I think a lot of people, in 20 years, if I'm sitting down with my kid or cousin or something and they're scrolling through an eShop, I'm probably going to say, no, stop, go back. Play that. You're going to enjoy it. And there's probably going to be other games that are inspired by this. And there's going to be players who remember Untitled Goose Game and are probably going to be eager to see what other devs' take on the formula is going to be, because it is kind of its own subgenre. So while not necessarily continuing to have tons of users, I think it's really left its mark on gaming as something that's really innovative.
What do you think, Mike?
Interesting points made up. BC, to your point about the context of a game, every game that's ever released is in its own context of the first time you see a 16-bit, 32-bit, 64-bit game. We've never seen that before, man. Oh, it's groundbreaking because it never happened before. Or I mean, I can see some weird dystopia of they had nothing, but they made it anyway, or something like that. But everything has that context, and they all stand for that exactly as it is. And I mean, like, to think about where all the sum of where we were, and when any one developer picks up and starts again, they will look on the things that have affected them. Will this game have affected them? Absolutely, because it is something that is very refreshingly different. And so maybe not the formula is taken, but elements of that move forward to when you design a different thing and the next big thing. I mean, I don't know. I'm not sure if we're going to see, Goose in AR or VR, but hey, maybe, why not? I mean, or just even the different take on animal stealth being a fun thing, if even for a mini game inside a bigger game, because we all have that, and I'm sure there'll be some Belver homage and things like that. I just don't see this as something that's going to be a small footnote in the greater scheme of games. This is something that will come up as, oh yeah, some guys from New Zealand, as you said, did this, and it was different, it was refreshing, and some business persons have come knock on someone else's door. We got to do something like this, man. Maybe not exactly this, but it's going to stand as, if nothing else, a bookmark in, and this is what gaming was.
Would you say then? Would you guys say then, in that way, it is a representative of the time?
I would have to say time. The interesting thing I'm seeing is, as we go through time, these eras, these little epics, get smaller, as technology and the what do you call it, industry matures further, right? Because to stand out, you definitely have to be something very refreshing, and then the next cycle is going to be a lot faster.
It looked like you had something to add to that too, Adrien.
No, just agreeing with Mike there. As gaming becomes larger, there are many different threads of it. And like Mike said, these cycles of things becoming very popular become more compressed, especially if the games are single play experiences. Yeah, I think we're going to see more games like this. I think a lot of devs looked at this and went, oh, you can do something really different with stealth games. If you look at indie stealth games before now, a lot of them are top-down, like hyper lethal sort of games that are designed around just being very precise with your movement. While this is just like completely out of left field. It's a totally new take on things. And when we have other games, other game developers are going to say, hey, we were inspired by Untitled Goose Game to take a completely different spin on either their game or some other genre.
What do you think, BC?
I don't know. I feel like how I mentioned it earlier, I don't necessarily view, I think I agree with what was said. I don't necessarily view it as this game is going to become enormous and huge and franchised in the way that other games might be. Like, I don't think we're going to see so many like stuff and other merchandise and references and stuff being dropped about Untitled Goose Game moving forward. In the same vein as other games. I really don't, I think it'll have its shelf life in the discourse, and I think it'll have its it'll have its lifetime, it'll have its time in the spotlight, and it's going to have moments where folks go, hey, remember playing this? And they're like, oh yeah, that was pretty good. And I think that's basically it. I do think and I agree that people are going to make note of what made it so good and what made it enjoyable, and either spoof off of that or take that as inspiration for where to move forward. But I don't think it by itself is completely groundbreaking and completely, pun intended, game-changing.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, and I definitely don't think that it is going to be sensationalized in the same way that other games were. Mm-hmm. Like if you were to ask someone at the height of when the game came out and it was popular and everybody was asking it, if you were to mention the word cake, just the word cake, so many folks, their brain immediately goes cake, Portal, GLaDOS, and all that. And I don't think there's anything about Untitled Goose Game that stands out in that particular way. And I don't think there's anything about the game that will make it trigger that type of memory in people.
I would disagree, although I don't know if this is just my personal brain works differently from other people. But anytime I hear or see the word honk written or said, or if I hear a honking, or not, sometimes not even a honking, I work at a pet campus where there is a frequent client has a beagle that they bring in, and that dog honks like when it barks. Mm-hmm. It's like honk, 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 honk. Okay. And every time it does, I think of the game, and it's part of like as we've been building up to recording this episode, I've just been laughing every time I hear that dog barking or honking. Mm-hmm. And I think that there might be some other people that are like me, where they might have gotten so much amusement out of honking as the goose that anytime they see a goose or hear a goose honk, that might trigger that memory for them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there are different levels of kind of cultural significance. Is this like, and I think we can bound this pretty well. Was Untitled Goose Game like a random flash in the pan that everybody forgot about in a month? No, not at all. Was it a cultural juggernaut like Minecraft or World of Warcraft or Portal? No. So, I think we can establish kind of an upper and lower bounds there where it really is something in between. And ultimately, it is an indie game. It's an indie game that broke out into the public and got some pretty good press, but it was still an indie game. And it's one that did pretty well and got a lot of people thinking and was a fun little chaos simulator.
That's a really good point to bring up, like the expectations of the developers. I'm sure that they never expected it to be as big a hit as it was. They never expected there to be people doing a podcast for 2 hours about that. No,
in fact, I think I remember an anecdote from one of the developers basically saying, that they were gone for a weekend, and then they got back and somebody said in their company chat, oh my God, look at Reddit. They went to our games or whatever, and it was all about their game. They're like, holy shit, what did we do?
I love the idea of like a dev company just like working to the bone down to that very last minute, and then they hit like the button that launches the game, and they're like, all right, shut everything down, we're going on a vacation, nobody look at the internet for 2 days. Like, mm-hmm. I don't care what they're saying, we deserve a break.
Yeah. I think for me, the biggest thing of this I'd be interested to see what the devs decide to do next. Should they want to do some more stuff? That's like, to do something wonderfully once, cool. That can happen. Blue Moon, right? But then to hit it again, like, oh, these guys really are doing something. That would be the ones, right? Not the one hit wonder, but maybe the guys who mean something like that. That would be interesting for me to see what might be next for them.
Adrien, you said you were aware, probably more so than I am, of the other games that these developers have made. Is that right?
No, not off the top of my head.
Oh, okay. But I know that it seems like they have made other games. And so,
Yeah, well, let me just look it up real quick.
I mean, yeah, we Googled the age of the internet, right?
Yeah, these magic boxes.
Indeed.
I've got this thing in my pocket that has access to the planet's knowledge.
And yet I still ask stupid questions to the person next to me.
All
Yeah,
the time.
exactly.
Every day in life.
Exactly.
All right. Here we go. Let's see. It's made by House. Oh, they're from Melbourne, Australia.
Melbourne.
Melbourne.
Yeah.
No,
Melbourne.
Melbourne, Australia.
Melbourne. It is Melbourne.
Yep.
It's spelled that way, but I think they want you to pronounce it Melbourne.
If you ask in Aussie, they will tell you it's Melbourne.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, like Greenwich.
Yes. Looks like they've only released one other major game called Push Me Pull You.
Was that prior or after?
Prior
Okay.
in 2016.
So I never heard of that one.
I mean,
But it looks like every couple of years they've been putting them out, except for probably the pandemic.
I mean,
Slowed them down a little bit.
I don't know. In my opinion, that would speed people up. But that's
Yeah.
Yeah, I definitely would want to check that game out and see if see how it feels, and then I definitely will be keeping an eye on the company to see what they come out with in the future.
Right.
And that is such a great thing because, like, if you come across a novelist or an author that you really like, then you just have to look out for that one name. Like, this is more like, and then if it's a movie, maybe you look at the director or the script writer, but most often the director. But with this, you look at the development house, like with the video games. Like you look at the whole house, what they're doing together as a team.
It's a brand, is what it is, right? So yeah.
Have you guys 100% of the game?
No, I haven't.
No.
Oh heck no.
We haven't.
No, I mean, just before the cast, we were revisiting the game, and so like one of the things we did was we just went and had the gardener go buy back his trowel, and so we were very happy about stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Crossing out some of the bonus tasks.
Yeah.
I am aware though of the completion bonus. Are you guys aware of what it is?
No, I'm not. What is it?
Do you guys care about spoilers? Anybody?
Just hit me.
Oh, hit me with it.
Okay. So basically, you complete every task, and then you get a message that says, "Congratulations! There's a gift waiting for you at home." You go back to the home where the bells are hidden, and you started the game. And there's a little present box. You open the present, and there's a crown. And if you take the crown as an item and bring it to one of the townsfolk, they will put it on you.
Wow. Oh, don't you bring it to the boy.
And I think that's just it's the ultimate completion bonus for a game like this, where, as Adrien, you've said multiple times throughout the cast, like you in the goose's eyes, you rule this town. Like you're the head honcho, you're the king, and you finally earned the respects of the townsfolk, because they don't like you, but they're giving in. They're like, you know what, fine, yeah, you're the king, whatever, we give up. And I really especially like the fact that you can't just put the crown on yourself. You have to take it to a townsfolk, and they crown you. And
you are a goose after all.
Yeah. It's like you can't just declare yourself the king. You have to beat them into submission with your pestering.
Maybe I'm a different curmudgeon, but like if I was a townsfolk, this kept happening, I would go get myself a shotgun real fast and call it, because yeah.
I feel like if you did it right, you could turn it into a selling point, like a tourist attraction. Like you've built a tall enough fence around this one area, and maybe that's why they're okay with keeping the geese around. And it's just like, come visit, and as part of our bed and breakfast experience, you can watch this goose go on its daily routine of fucking up our small town.
I mean, I don't know, maybe the bell maker would want to keep it alive. Who knows?
Or like in a Hot Fuzz, where they just have that goose that's kind of a troublemaker, but it's just a part of the town that everyone just kind of accepts and loves. And like, yeah, maybe they find it a little bit annoying, but if it ever stopped being the way it was, they would have a problem with that. Like I would love to see that kind of dynamic of like, you know what, like maybe the goose is kind of annoying. Maybe the mayor is embezzling, and it's weird that we keep re-electing people from the same family. But you know what? That's just the way our town is. That's just kind of that's just our life here. Is we have crime and geese, and sometimes they're related.
Yeah. I was curious, so I looked it up. In Hot Fuzz, it's not a goose, swans.
Swan, okay.
Swan.
But it's close enough. Like it's
Similar.
just a
Similar.
bird that's causing
Hold
some
on.
kind of
Is a
mischief.
swan obnoxious? I don't know about that.
This one was. It got in the middle of a gunfight.
Well, okay.
I don't know. From what I understand, swans can be pretty mean-spirited as well.
They
So
can indeed.
So all fowl really are just like, anyway.
There was a crane.
Except ducks. Ducks are wholesome.
Are they? They land
No.
in my backyard too and go crap in my pool. So no.
This is true.
The messed up part about that is they can't even drink the water. They're landing just to crap there. Like,
Oh
Yeah.
yeah.
That's fair. All right. To answer the earlier question, no, I have not 100% of the game, which is very strange and understandable in a way because, you know, I've only played it the one time and I played it with someone else. It was a great time, but I absolutely, if I were by myself, I absolutely would have just done it and kept going at it until I got the crown because I am absolutely a completionist. I love getting to all of the achievements and everything you can get done in the game. So that is absolutely the energy that I would have gone into it with, but based on circumstance, I just couldn't.
Right.
Honestly, I don't know that I'd change that. I kind of liked only playing it the one time, so I've had the experience, and that's all I really need.
it's not a game that I think we would have returned to naturally, especially with as many other games as there are to play out there. But I think I'm glad that we did return to it for the sake of the podcast. Because like now I kind of want to go back and do all the little.
Yeah. I didn't need to go get every flower and put it into the basket. But like, hey, if we're playing again, yeah, I would do it.
Yeah.
So yeah.
What do you think, Adrien, of the crown as the completion bonus? How does that sound to you? Like,
You know, I think as since you referenced what I was saying earlier, you know, I think it's basically perfect. Especially that the townsperson or the townsfolk have to crown you as the king of the town.
that they even will. Like,
Yeah. They're just like, you know what? At this point, whatever. You've already caused so much destruction.
and
You own this town now.
And then in the name of calling it a sandbox, I do think that is the ultimate goal of any sandbox, is to make you feel like the king of the sandbox,
Mm-hmm.
whether you have to earn it or whether you already feel that way as the game starts. I think that should be like the ultimate goal.
Yeah.
Think of any sandbox, like in any kind of variation of that sandbox, like formula, like even Minecraft to that extent. Like by the end of, if you ever get to a point where you feel like you've beat Minecraft, like you feel like the king of that land. Like,
But
I mean, in some cases, literally, because I've spent hundreds of hours building a gigantic castle to lord over the surrounding countryside. Yes, that's quite accurate.
I am the lord of my fief.
Yes.
so like Grand Theft Auto or Saints Row, something that I'll want to talk about then too is like both of those games. Like by the end of it, I definitely feel like maybe even more so with Saints Row. Like the city is yours. It just doesn't know it yet. Like, so yeah. I think that it definitely accomplishes everything that a sandbox should accomplish, even if it does have a bit more of a focus than a lot of the sandbox games that I've played.
Yeah, and I think like we've let's talk about a little bit more of Untitled Goose Game as a sandbox. It's a very limited sandbox, but it's also one where, like I mentioned before, I don't think adding more stuff to it would have made it any better. I don't think adding a crafting system to it to like make stuff would have made for a more engaging game, or I think, or adding recruitable allies or anything like that. None of these things would have improved the game experience.
I do think maybe some other animals, like maybe a dog or like a cat that you could interact with, or could be some kind of an obstacle.
That'd be interesting. That'd be
Like
interesting.
the little tiny stuff that they could do.
I think it'd be very interesting to have that same idea and have a section either towards the beginning or towards the end where you do, like you said, where the only thing in your path is a dog or some other type of animal, like a squirrel or something like that, where, you know, the only object of it is to get past this particular animal, because turns out they have a similar idea. Or, you know, they are similar energy to you, where, you know, they're doing their own thing, and at the same time there is the part of their day that is just, you know, there's the part of the day that's just messing with all the humans and the other folks around you, and it turns out you both have this side mission of just mess with the other person, with the other animal.
Yeah, you know, I think that would work in two ways from what you were describing. One, having a dog who wants to do nothing but play with you would be an amazing just enemy, you know, enemy in heavy air quotes, you know, entirely good-natured, but prevents you from proceeding because it wants to play with you, and you have to find some way to distract the dog so that you can proceed. The other idea of having something else that's also terrorizing the town would be interesting, and you know, maybe that would work for something like a sequel, because it would mean that the game's mechanics would change significantly, but it would still be in the same vein where a lot of the challenge from the game is in the enemy AI and manipulating it in order to achieve your objectives.
And like, would that work as like kind of like a race? Like,
Yeah.
who can get the bell first? Coming
That'd
from
be funny.
two different, like maybe there's like the full map and the bell's in the middle, and then whether you're coming in from the east or the west, you have different objectives that you have to meet.
Interesting.
That, or doing it similar way where you've got not similar objectives, but you're taking similar paths, where, you know, like in this particular section, you know, you have to do this to get through, but it turns out if you do this beforehand, you know, if you do it in this order, then here comes this other thing, it comes along, and you somehow have to manipulate the environment to get through while also dealing with this other AI thing going on. And at the very end, you walk by, you know, you're dragging your bell or whatever, and say, here comes, I don't know, a squirrel that's dragging the hat off of the town statue or something like that. And it's just, you know, dealing with, you know, you're doing your thing, they're doing their thing, but you're crossing paths and you have to navigate that somehow.
Be an interesting way to put a spin on the game.
Yeah, I would play that.
Yeah.
I think squirrels and dogs make almost any game better that they don't already have them in.
Indeed.
So we're coming up on 2 hours here, which I think is a pretty impressive amount of time to be talking about Untitled Goose Game.
It was a really good game.
I think it is a really good game. Does anybody have any final questions that they wanted to ask or thoughts that they wanted to share?
None from me.
No?
Nothing I mean, I think to Adrian's point, it was such a nice, tight game. It was talking with a lot. Once you get past that, there's not a lot of surrounding it.
Yeah, I agree. I don't really have anything more to say. Like I said, it's a very tight game. It's very quick, easy. It's fun. You can potentially do it in an afternoon or an evening and walk away from it, and it's just a wonderful time while it lasts. And you know, you don't have to spend too much time thinking about it afterwards.
Thank you all for coming and being a part of this. This was awesome. Really love this game, so I really love talking about it. Obviously, I really enjoy hanging out and talking to you guys and hearing your thoughts on all of this. And to everybody listening, thank you for listening. Thank you for making it all the way to the end. I'm assuming because you made it into 150 or an hour and 50 something minutes that you've enjoyed hearing us nerd out. And if that's the case, I really hope that you continue to keep an eye on our channel. And if you haven't already, go back and listen to some of our other thoughts. Everybody that was on the episode today has been on episodes in the past. So let this be your gateway into getting to know us a little bit better. Thanks again to everybody. for being a part of this. Thanks to everybody at home. Till next time, stay nerdy.
All right.
Awesome, guys.